She didn't ask, she declared, clutching a pink clipboard like it was some royal proclamation. This woman, the self-crowned queen of the HOA, marched up my driveway and said, "My daughter's wedding is next Saturday, and we'll be using your pool for the reception." I honestly thought it had to be a joke, maybe some bizarre neighborhood stunt. But no, Karen was completely serious. In her universe, membership in the same HOA implied common community facilities, which as it turns out now apparently included my private, fenced, personally cared for, chlorine alkalinity balanced backyard swimming pool. She was still in my face when she tapped on her clipboard, fiddled with her sunglasses and said, "I'll have my niece come over and arrange some towels and refreshments. Leave the gate open." Then she whirled around and pranced off like she'd just negotiated a peace agreement. That's when I snapped. Things were going to go nuclear, and Jello was going to be my ammunition of choice. I froze in place for a good 30 seconds. Even my golden retriever, Max, tilted his head in complete bewilderment. Had that conversation just really happened? Oh, sure. Karen's heels were still clicking down the sidewalk like she owned every last inch of it. I strolled over to the side gate and gazed out at the pool. Spotless, blue, beautiful. Took me all spring to redo it. Thousands of dollars. All those hours scrubbing, sealing, testing, and now, without so much as a single word of deliberation, suddenly it was some splash zone for a wedding in which I played no part whatsoever. I chuckled. Not that it was humorous, more so out of sheer incredulity. She really thought I'd just roll over and let it happen. She had no idea who she was dealing with. And let me be upfront here. I don't hate weddings. I don't have any issue with the bride, whoever she might even be. I didn't even know her name. I just knew she was Karen's daughter. And that apparently meant guests were going to be cannonballing into my own private pool as part of some Pinterest-perfect party. No one bothered to ask. No invitation was extended. Just flat out, no holds barred entitlement. It was as if they'd concluded my backyard was an afterthought to their mood board. I sent a text to Greg, the two-door down neighbor, the one who actually had the wedding on his property, and inquired if he knew about this. His response, "Wait, what?" Karen had informed him that I'd offered up the pool, so she wasn't merely entitled, she was also a liar. That evening I sat out on the patio, drink in hand, black thoughts churning, and then I recalled the stack of Jello boxes in the pantry. Purchased during a sale, red cherry, dozens of them. They were to be used for some silly backyard party that never materialized. But now they had a purpose, a small, shaky, beautiful purpose. I Googled how much gelatin it would require to fill a 20,000-gallon pool. The response? Preposterous. And also, ideal. I didn't require the entire thing to harden, only enough to render swimming impossible. So I began with the shallow end, allowed it to set overnight, just enough to create a vision of complete silliness. Next morning I raided the hardware store. Buckets, industrial-sized cooking pots. The cashier stared at me as I unpacked more than 200 packages of gelatin. I just smiled and replied, "Pool party." He chuckled. The poor guy didn't have a clue. For days I worked like a crazy scientist. Early mornings, late nights. Always when Karen was not home. Boil water, mix powder, fill it in, section by section. I even stirred the mixture with a humongous painter's paddle to achieve maximum coverage. Max stood on the deck, judgment in his gaze, but I was too far in to back out. This wasn't revenge. It was about standing up against the creeping madness Karen had introduced to our HOA since declaring herself acting president. By day 4, the whole shallow end was a red, glittering sea. Glossy, slick, completely unswimmable. I tried it out by throwing a tennis ball onto the surface. It bounced. Success. I installed cameras, placed a laminated sign, "Caution, experimental dessert cooling in progress." Then I waited. Sure enough, the next morning, Karen's niece came, perhaps 16, in head-to-toe designer, carrying a tote full of beach towels and plastic flamingo floats. She approached the gate, expecting party-perfect pool ambiance. She opened it, came inside, came to a dead stop, jaw dropped. "What the heck is this?" she asked, kicking the wiggling surface with her foot. "Is this jelly?" She scanned the area, looking for the secret camera. I emerged holding a mixing spoon. "You're just in time to assist with the garnish." She took off. 15 minutes later, I heard the scream. Karen. It began as a high-pitched shriek and soon turned into a melodramatic meltdown. I didn't even flinch, just sat there, stirring the Jello like some cartoon henchman. She stormed over, face redder than the pool, finger wagging like she was casting a spell. "You destroyed the wedding! This is destruction of property!" she yelled. "Actually," I said, "it's culinary art. Also, it's my pool. On my property. The only error on my part was your belief that it wasn't." She didn't have a response. Her mouth just opened and closed like a goldfish, her eyes bouncing between the gate and the red gelatin blob. I added, Your guests are more than welcome to grab a spoon. I've got whipped cream too. She made a sound, more of a growl than a gasp, and stormed away, threatening to call the HOA board and report me in a formal complaint. I flashed a friendly wave, Max let out a bark, and I returned to stirring Jello one ladle at a time. Karen had thought she could take whatever she wanted just because she wore heels and carried a clipboard, but I possessed something even better. A beautifully petty scheme, an arsenal of gelatin, and a pool to become legendary. The wedding morning was noisier than normal. Trucks beeped, reversing into driveways. Folding chairs crashed, and Karen's recognizable shriek rang out across the subdivision like a bargain megaphone. There she was, at front and center, draped in some ridiculously formal pastel-colored getup, yelling commands at caterers, florists, and a cluster of bewildered-looking family members. It was like observing a dictator going into battle, except the foe was rudimentary coordination. I drank my coffee on the patio, wearing sunglasses as the chaos unfolded. Sitting where I was, I had a front-row view of the mayhem next door, and to the increasing number of wedding guests giving my backyard fence the once-over. By the middle of the morning, my yard was a visual spectacle. Nobody had crossed over yet, but the fence was now a viewing window. Strangers gazed through holes like they were looking at a zoo exhibit. Some even took photographs. I heard one woman say, "Oh my God, is that Jello? That's cute." I almost spat out my drink. Cute wasn't exactly the message I was sending, but hey, I'd take it. I'd spent 4 nights creating enough gelatin to trap a toddler, and if they mistook it for whimsical decor, even better. Then Karen's niece returned. This time she brought backup. 2 teens trailing behind her, each armed with towels, a boombox, and a cooler sloshing with the unmistakable sound of soda cans. They pushed through my side gate as if they were VIPs, ignoring completely the laminated sign still proudly displayed. Caution, Jello in progress. No lifeguard on duty. The niece glanced at the now completely set pool and groaned, "Ugh, this is still happening?" One of the guys pushed on the surface with his flip-flop, made a squishy sound with his mouth, and laughed hysterically. I paused a beat, then walked out with Max by my side. He emitted a low rumble, not hostile, merely sufficient to convey the message. No nonsense. "Lost?" I queried, raising an eyebrow. The niece bristled. "Karen said that we could spend time here before the ceremony begins," she explained, attempting to sound assertive. "We just need some place to relax." I smiled and nodded toward the tottering red expanse. Lots of chill right there, although I wouldn't say jump in unless you're prepared to bounce and smash your face. One of the boys said, "Yo, can you eat this?" I shrugged. "Only if you signed a waiver." That was all they needed. Without further ado, they backed off, though the niece rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might pull a muscle. Approximately 30 minutes after that, Karen herself arrived, full-on rage mode. She charged onto my lawn as if she had diplomatic immunity and began yelling before I could even close the gate behind her. "You think it's funny? You think making someone's wedding day a joke is adorable?" I responded calmly. "Nope. I think charging onto someone's private property uninvited is worse." She went into a complete meltdown, screaming about how she'd informed all of them that they could use the pool, how I was embarrassing her, how this would all be reported. I held out a spoon. That did not assist. She turned the very same color as the Jello. Karen insisted that I drain the pool now. I asked if she had any idea how long it takes to melt 300 grams of gelatin. 2 to 3 days minimum, unless you're packing hair dryers and a flamethrower. She screamed, "This isn't over." I replied, "Oh, it absolutely is. At least until dessert." She spun around and stormed off again, knocking over a plastic flamingo on her way out. By noon, the wedding had reached its peak in full swing, and so had the rumors. Guests whispered by my fence. At least a couple of children stopped and looked it through the gate. Once, a curious bridesmaid stopped and asked if she could touch it. I said yes. Her response, "Oh my God, it's like solid jam." She snapped a selfie and sashayed away laughing, holding her phone out to the other bridesmaid. Within seconds, I could hear them whooping and nicknaming it Karen's Kool-Aid catastrophe. And then something wonderful occurred. One of the groomsmen, already drunk, sporting sunglasses that screamed identity crisis, dared another man. $50 if you belly flop. He murmured the words as if they were holy. And me? I said nothing. The daredevil stood at the shallow end, counted down, and launched himself into the air like a human cannonball. What ensued was the stuff of legend. He didn't plummet, he bounced. The surface of the Jello flexed and wobbled under him like some bad waterbed nightmare. He let out a shocked yelp and slid down into the shallowest area like a floppy pancake human. Everyone completely lost it. Cell phones were introduced. Visitors were videotaping in all directions. Even the bride, who was observing from the adjacent deck, burst out laughing uncontrollably. That's when Karen emerged from the garage and witnessed it all. She shrieked like someone had just plunged a knife into her wedding cake. Racing over, she clutched the groomsman's arm and began screaming about lawsuits, liability, and brain damage from gelatin. The guy just laughed, shouted, "Best wedding ever," and walked off, a tottering towel draped over his shoulder. Karen whirled on me like I was the bad guy. "You're going to pay for this," she snapped. I just smiled. "You're welcome. That man just turned your snooze fest of a reception into viral gold." I gestured toward the ocean of phones snapping every wobble. "Smile, you're trending." In minutes, the videos were soaring. Hashtags such as Karen's Jello pool, HOA gone wild, and when a wedding meets a dessert disaster ruled the local hashtag lists. The HOA Facebook page went off. Everyone commented with stuff like "Karen strikes again," and "This guy is a legend." Someone even created a meme featuring Karen holding a gargantuan spoon labeled "Taste Justice" below. She didn't show up again that whole afternoon. Instead, she disappeared inside, likely to rage email the other half of the internet and hold on to the last remains of her dignity. While that was happening next door, the wedding devolved into a fiasco of cringeworthy dancing, uncomfortable speeches, and people sneaking away to guffaw at the jiggling pool from my side of the fence. I had commandeered the whole wedding's atmosphere without even leaving my own yard. And the cherry on top? I wasn't done. Because revenge, it's best served cold, and mine was freezing to perfection, one jiggle at a time. By the following morning, the street was abuzz, not only with residual trash and wilted flower arrangements, but with gossip. The videos had traveled faster than Karen's legendary gossip train. Teenagers on bicycles began making circuits like my street was now a tourist attraction. Parents break their morning strolls to look through the fence slats and laugh. I even spotted old Mr. Donnelly from 3 streets over, grinning on his walker and muttering, "Never thought I'd live to see the day gelatin beat Karen." But of course, not everyone was laughing. That morning, someone knocked on my door. Paul, our HOA president, stood in front of me. Generally, the man's a human bobblehead to Karen's every command. But today, he was a wreck. Puffy eyes, crumpled polo, clipboard dangling limply in one hand. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice low. I let him. He sat out on my patio and glared at the red wobbly pool as if it had committed a crime. I waited, arms crossed. After taking a deep breath, he spoke at last. "Karen held an emergency board meeting this morning. She's filing a complaint." I arched an eyebrow. "For spoiling dessert?" He dodged that. "She says you destroyed a community event, embarrassed her family, and made an unsafe environment." I couldn't help but chuckle. "She means the party she wasn't invited to, had no permission to hold here, and loudly took as her own?" Paul massaged his temple. "Listen, I understand. Karen's much, but we're under scrutiny. Some of the board members believe we need to reply officially, just to get in front of it before it blows up." I reclined and locked eyes with him. "Let me get this straight. She trespassed, lied about having permission, tried to turn my backyard into a wedding venue, and now I'm the one in trouble for not playing along?" Paul gave a slow, weary nod. "Yeah, that's basically it." I sipped my coffee, smirking. "Well, good luck with that. I've got time-stamped footage, 1,000 eyewitnesses, and video evidence of her niece breaking in and guests diving headfirst into Jello." Paul exhaled hard. "Off the record? No one on the board wants a war. We're just trying to cool her down. But she's threatening lawsuits, media coverage, and even dragging in her brother, the one who used to be a paralegal." I grinned wider. "Oh, let her. I cannot wait to tell this to a judge." I filled my own pool with Jello, mostly to keep trespassers out. Paul blinked. "You're not serious." I nodded. "Dead serious. I've even got the grocery store receipts to prove it." He paused, looking at me like he wasn't sure if I was brilliant or crazy, then erupted into laughter. "You might be the weirdest kind of genius I've ever met." By lunchtime, the HOA Facebook page had gone ballistic. Someone had cut together a greatest hits reel of the wedding craziness, Karen's breakdown, the groomsman's catastrophic Jello wipeout, all accompanied by circus music. Karen attempted to get it taken down, but for everyone that came down, 3 new versions cropped up. The comments were ruthless. Individuals unearthed her most notable hits, fining a person for having Halloween decorations up on November 1st, attempting to ban wind chimes due to the fact that they were spiritually disruptive. Even HOA board members began chiming in with not-so-faint posts. One of them posted, "Reminder, private property is not equal to Karen's personal event space." That night, my doorbell rang once again. I steeled myself for a full-fledged Karen ambush. Instead, it was 2 individuals in their late 20s, well-dressed, but obviously exhausted. The guy identified himself as Brandon, the groom. His new bride smiled weakly at me. "We just wanted to say thank you," she said. I blinked. "For what?" she laughed. For being the only sane person involved in our wedding, Brandon continued. We had no clue Karen informed everyone they were welcome to use your pool. She also lied to us. We only wanted an intimate reception with close friends. She made it a full-blown circus. I welcomed them in, and before long we were chatting for more than an hour. They described to me how Karen bulldozed the entire planning process, booking vendors off on her own, insisting on ridiculous flower requests, even making them invite guests they didn't know. The bride confessed to having cried in the bathroom 3 times on her own wedding day. But that Jello thing, she said with a smile, was the only time I actually laughed. Brandon smiled. When Dave belly flopped into the pool, I swear my grandma near died laughing. I invited them to have some leftovers and offered them the remainder of the gelatin if they wanted to begin married life on a food fight. They graciously declined but departed smiling. Just as they were about to leave, the bride turned around and said, Karen's banned from our next wedding. Then she laughed and added, just kidding. Hopefully there won't be another one. The next day, Karen went full scorched earth. She started handing out printed flyers accusing me of turning dessert into a weapon. She made a public scene at the grocery store, demanding they stop selling Jello. She even contacted a local news station. They declined to air her story. Apparently it didn't meet their credibility threshold. But the best moment? When she tried to report me to the city for pool code violations. The inspector who appeared, same fellow who'd seen the viral video, knocked on my door, chuckling and said, had to see it for myself. He poked around, inspected the fences, checked to see everything was within code, then asked if he could get his picture taken in front of the pool. You made my week, he said, and then departed. In the meantime, Karen glared on her porch, yelling something about corruption, and then slamming her front door so violently her wreath was knocked off. Later that week, the HOA board had a closed meeting without Karen. Rumors spread quickly. Several board members were weighing whether to vote her out as president. Too many grievances, too many tantrums, too many irate emails with her name in boldface. One board member even stopped me on the street and whispered, you didn't just stand up for your yard. You may have saved the neighborhood. Of course, since Karen was going off the deep end, a new problem arose. Folks began asking if they could use my Jello pool to rent. One fellow wanted to shoot a music video. Another wanted to get engaged to his girlfriend. I rejected most of them, but one kid offered me $50 to cannonball into it for a TikTok challenge. I allowed him. He slipped, landed on his back, and laughed so hard I had to hose him off. Look, I never did intend to be a hero. I just wanted my own backyard. But every now and then, a little stubbornness, spiced with a dash of petty, can make you a legend. In all honesty, it was like poetry. Karen was walking around one day like some self-appointed HOA monarch. The next, she was all but invisible. Her nightly patrols, parading down streets, scowling at lawns, were gone in an instant. She went dark on social media. Her porch light remained unlit, and even the small sign outside her door that said, HOA business only, somehow vanished. In the meantime, the neighborhood itself lightened, as if someone had finally removed batteries from a smoke detector that had been beeping for years. But just because Karen didn't say a word didn't mean the fallout was finished. The HOA convened a closed-door session that Friday, and for once, all the seats were occupied. No surprise, really. Word had already gone out that Karen's dynasty could be ending. I wasn't included, naturally, but the gossip spread quickly. Apparently, after watching footage of the incident and listening to testimony from several neighbors, the decision was made unanimously. Karen had officially been ousted from her role. She attempted to plead her case, alleged bias, insisted I must have planted the Jello in order to frame her. Yes, actually. But no one believed it anymore. Her power had dissipated. A few days later, Paul showed up at my door again, this time with no clipboard, just a sheepish smile and a folded letter in hand. Thought you'd want to see this, he said. Inside was an official apology from the board. They admitted things had been poorly handled, that Karen had overstepped her authority, and that while my methods were unconventional, they were understandable given the situation. I read it quietly until my eyes reached the bottom corner. Taped to the page was a voucher. Free pool cleaning, compliments of the HOA. I literally laughed out loud. You guys know it's not even dirty, right? Paul shrugged. Call it a peace offering, and maybe a little hint about the Jello. I liked the gesture, even though I had absolutely no intention of getting rid of it. Not yet. It was essentially a neighborhood landmark at this point. Kids drove past school just to look at it. A local artist even requested permission to take it for a weird summer project. I was fine with that, on one stipulation, that she attributed it to Karen's legacy. She was entirely on board. But the biggest surprise was later that week. Someone knocked on my back gate. Absolutely not another visit from HOA or Curious Walker. It was the bride, by herself this time. She appeared to be different, lighter, less tense. With a somewhat awkward wave, she said, "Mind if I come in?" I opened the gate. She came over and stood at the rim of the Jello pool, staring at the glimmering red wobble as if it contained some sort of answer. Then she sighed. "It's strange," she said. This was the one thing about my wedding that I enjoyed." I didn't have anything to say at first. She settled into a patio chair and began ranting about the entire day being a failure. The music had stopped. The food hadn't arrived on time. The centerpieces, Karen's, were so tall that people couldn't see from one side of the tables to the other. Her husband's grandmother almost fell on the wet patio, and two groomsmen engaged in a shouting dispute over a pilfered boutonniere. But the pool? That ridiculous, bright red, wiggly pool? It was the only thing that alleviated the tension. It made people laugh. It was the memory everyone raved about, positively. I said to her I was happy. She smiled. "You turned her power move into a joke. You know that, right?" I shrugged. Wasn't attempting to. I just didn't want people off the street turning my yard into a resort and me serving as lifeguard without submitting an application for the position. She laughed for real. Then she asked if she could do something really wild. Before I could respond, she pulled out her phone and said, "Let's get a photo." We stood before the shaky red pool, sunlight reflecting off the surface. She captioned it, "Best part of the wedding. Long live the Jello King." That post went viral. People who had not even seen the original video now knew the story. Someone on Reddit posted it under the headline, "Pettiest Pool Owner Strikes Again." Messages began pouring in. Proposals to send additional Jello, novelty t-shirts reading, "Stay out of my pool," and licensed Jello operator. One firm even proposed a concept for a backyard party called Jello-Am. I rejected most of it, but one concept lingered. What if I hosted a small gathering, just for the neighborhood? A fun celebration, not for me alone, but for all who'd been run over by Karen's tyranny for far too long. I spent the weekend preparing. No invitation, just a hand-lettered sign on my gate. Saturday noon, bring a spoon. By 11:45, the crowd was already gathering. Parents brought their children. Teens came with their friends. Old Mr. Donnelly rolled up with enough lawn chairs to cover half the block. I drank lemonade, music, let the children stick at the Jello with plastic forks. Whipped cream appeared. Someone else arrived with cocktail umbrellas and planted them directly into the gelatin. It was strange. It was silly. It was completely perfect. Halfway through, Paul made a brief toast. He stood by the fence holding a cup of lemonade and said, "Sometimes the best way to deal with chaos is with creativity and perhaps a little sugar." People laughed. Someone even applauded. And for a brief moment, I allowed myself to think that perhaps even Karen had learned something from all of this. But then I heard her, that unmistakable voice, sour and biting, wafting from across the street. She stood on her porch, arms crossed, eyes full of judgment, just watching. She didn't utter a sound, just stared. One of the people from the crowd had the nerve to wave at her. She closed her door, and that was it. That night, when I was collapsing chairs and chucking empty cups into the wastebasket, I saw something taped to my fence. A sticky note. "Thanks for the laughs. We needed it. Your neighbors." Below it, in a different hand, "P.S. Keep the Jello." I smiled, tucked the note into my pocket, and sat down beside Max. The dog collapsed alongside me as we regarded the final wisps of sunlight reflecting off the crimson undulating pool. Karen had attempted to dominate the neighborhood, turn clipboards into weapons and perfection into pressure, but ultimately, she was outmaneuvered by gelatin. And to me, that's the most sweet sort of triumph possible. 2 weeks after the wedding disaster, just when things finally felt calm, like a chilled Jello mold firming in the fridge, a manila envelope showed up on my doorstep, thick, stamped, official .legal letterhead from some law office I'd never heard of. Inside, a letter full of flowery, faux intelligent language, the kind that tries to sound smarter than it is. Karen was trying to sue me. The claims? Emotional distress, property sabotage, public defamation, and my personal favorite, non-compliant neighborhood conduct. I laughed out loud. I'd heard of people weaponizing the legal system, but this was Karen cranking the dial to absurdity. She'd turned pettiness into a paperwork crusade. The pages were clearly written by that paralegal brother she always bragged about. The logic was a circus act. One of them complained I had lured guests into a dangerous environment, like the Jello had some kind of hypnotic siren song. Another complained I had ruined essential photography backgrounds. Yes, apparently the Wiggly Pool had ruined the visual appeal of her wedding. She even submitted screenshots of TikToks and memes as proof of viral ridicule. I forwarded the entire thing to my lawyer friend just for the humor. His reaction? "This is so idiotic it may implode in court from shame." Nevertheless, I didn't take it lying down. I submitted a formal rebuttal, denied all allegations, included receipts, timestamped security camera video, and a copy of the sign I'd posted. I even included a video of her niece trespassing onto my lawn, gelatin splash and all. My attorney appended a last paragraph cutting as a cheesecake knife, a clear and consistent pattern of willful trespass in the guise of neighborly overture. It was nearly enjoyable, as spooning through a perfect layer of set Jello. A week later, another visit, another clipboard, another city inspector. Karen had complained again, this time that my pool was a health hazard. I greeted him warmly, led him directly to the site of the supposed crime. He dipped a test strip into the thick red surface, observed the result, and laughed. Well, it's not quite a swimming hazard anymore, more like a really big snack. He inspected the filtration system, verified everything was functioning properly, and completed a short report. No violations found. Medium risk for ants. I invited him over for lemonade. He declined graciously, but asked if he could share the video with his wife, who'd been tracking the drama on Facebook. I said, "Be my guest." That night, another batch of posts landed in the neighborhood group chat. Someone had taken a photo of the inspector kneeling beside the pool, laughing. Caption, "When the city's on your side, and maybe a little hungry." Karen didn't have a chance anymore. Her long-dreaded HOA bully tactics and rose-trimmed reputation were now a community meme. Over the next few days, the HOA completed a series of new amendments. Paul personally delivered me a printed version. He showed me the key updates, a regulation prohibiting unauthorized events that bleed onto non-HOA property, a provision stopping the use of private property as an implied amenity at social events, and wedged conveniently at the end with a not-so-secret smirk from Paul. Any exterior decorative or cooking changes to an enclosed private pool do not count as community disturbance, as long as they remain safely contained. I did not write that, but I certainly enjoyed the acknowledgement. Karen, for the most part, went radio quiet after that. Her house lights remained off more often than on. She didn't show up to HOA meetings anymore. The notorious weekly email tirades, once filled with passive-aggressive venom, disappeared. Occasionally, I'd glimpse her loitering in the blinds, sitcom villain-esque, as if she'd just fallen onto a metaphorical banana peel. Meanwhile, I leaned into fame. I didn't exactly have a choice. They continued to tag me in videos, requesting Jello recipes, seeking permission to replicate the stunt, even proposing branded lines of gelatin pool kits. I declined the business offers because, come on, but one idea lingered. I'd host a party every year, same date, a low-key, goofy, harmless backyard bash. No DJs, no flamingo floaties, just neighbors, lemonade, snacks, and a new quarts of Jello in the pool. I didn't empty it anymore, just put in a fresh layer. Different color every year, perhaps green one year, purple the next. Later, I put in underwater lights, made it have this strange, glowing, alien-like feel after dark. People enjoyed it. Kids posed for pictures. Adults shook their heads and chuckled. It became a tradition. They dubbed it Jiggle Fest. The next year, something totally unexpected. The bride returned. Not to stop by, she returned to shoot. Turns out she and her husband had begun a little YouTube channel. Primarily comedy, wedding planning disasters, slice-of-life content. They wanted to get their side of the story told. I compiled. The video went viral in less than a week. Sincere, funny, amazingly touching. The comment thread lit up. People are supporting me, roasting Karen, spreading their HOA nightmare tales as sort of online support group for the overgoverned and underloved. But the highlight? Months after, a little but thoroughly satisfying thing. A for sale sign popped up in Karen's yard. No declaration, no farewell speech, no drama, just vanished. The news traveled fast. She was moving downtown, to a new community, one that lacked an HOA. The irony, purely delectable. I did not wave farewell, did not gloat, didn't so much as look through the blinds. I just came out onto my patio, poured myself a drink, and sat poolside. This year's offering was lime green, glowing softly in the dim light. Max lay at my side, tail softly thumping, as if he knew we had finally won. See, I didn't fill my pool with Jello because I hated wedding, or because I wanted attention. I did it because someone overstepped, because they behaved as if my space was theirs, because they believed clipboards and patronizing nests rendered them invincible. But primarily, I did it because occasionally, just occasionally, the strangest solution is the most gratifying. And in a world where there are Karens everywhere, a bit of gelatin justice goes a long way.